For those of you that are new to our program, we've been doing classes for the city of Scottsdale for I think we're going on 7 or 8 years now. We used to do them in person, but with the pandemic and all, we've had to modify and do the classes this way. We do different topics every month, so keep an eye out on the schedule. The nonprofit website we maintain, which I'll give you the web address at the end, or I'll type it in here as I'm talking, shows you where all of our classes are and when and all of that. So fpfeaz.org. And it's on your little chat function there. If you want to write it down, you can view all of our classes and keep up with us. I also have little tidbits, small videos in there of different topics as well. So we are a 20-year-old nationwide nonprofit organization. I run the Arizona branch here, and the whole idea of this organization is to be able to provide good, sound financial education without the biases and the sales tactics we see out there on a regular basis. So hopefully you find a different atmosphere in our classes and keep joining us for all the other topics as well. My background, I again have been running this nonprofit here in Arizona for a little over 7 years, 8 years now. Yeah, I have a master's degree from University of Arizona focused in finance. I have a CFP. I've finished all the classes at Pepperdine University, and then I own a local family of companies that includes a wealth management firm and a tax firm. So I do have practical working experience in all of the topics that we cover, especially in a case like this, because this is a little bit financial advisor and a little bit tax person. And so it's important when talking about required distributions that we take in both sides of that equation. And then legal disclaimer, everything we talk about in our classes is for educational purposes only. Please utilize what you learned in our classes to work with your CPAs, financial advisors, attorneys, whoever it is that you need to work with to apply any of this to your specific situation. Everybody's in a different situation, especially when it comes to investing in taxes. So none of this is direct financial advice. So we're going to start out with some basic rules, understanding required minimum distributions and the rules surrounding them. We'll jump into the problems that occur when you begin your required minimum distributions. And then we'll jump into solutions and from all the different types of financial advisors out there, exploring all the different options. All right, so let's get some bases covered here, some basic rules. And before I really dive in, just so everybody knows, if you're feverishly taking notes, that's fine, but you can request a copy of all these slides as well, especially when we get to the chart on how to calculate your required distribution. It's kind of hard to write that down as fast as possible, or if you're trying to take pictures of it, sometimes they're not as clear. More than happy to send you a copy of all the slides. We do that in all of our classes and always have. All right, so subject to required distribution, okay? And so this is all the different types of accounts out there that you are forced to take money out of at some point in your life. And so the obvious one is IRAs, individual retirement accounts. That includes all the self-employed plans like SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, Keoghs, and solo 401ks. Work-based plans like 401ks, and then the 403bs and 457s have required distributions. Pensions, which usually are triggered before 70 for most people. That's the payment system that you get out of a previous employer. Those are technically IRAs. Some of you get cash options when you retire, and you're allowed to forego the payment and take the cash option. If you roll it into an IRA, that's not a taxable event. So it is, pensions are all typically IRA money. Many profit sharing plans are subject to required distributions. Believe it or not, Roth 401k, not standard Roth. Okay. Your regular Roth account is not subject to a required distribution, but if it is still in 401k status, it is subject to required distributions. And then when you inherit money from a spouse or a non-spouse, if you inherit it from a spouse, you will not have required distributions on your Roth. But if you inherit it from a non-spouse, meaning a parent or a sibling or otherwise, if it's not your spouse, you will have required minimum distributions on these. And now they've changed the rules. You simply have to have it distributed within 10 years. So the new rules, when you inherit from a non-spouse, an IRA or a Roth account, IRA meaning any of these accounts up here, you will have to have all that money out within 10 years. Okay. So the life stages of all your money, when we talk about these subject to required distribution, all your IRA accounts, anything prior to 59 and a half is considered early distribution and may come with a penalty. There are some ways to get around that, but normal distributions before 59 and a half are subject to a penalty. Regular distribution, meaning you're free to do whatever you want with these monies, 59 and a half to now 72, because required minimum distributions going forward don't begin until your 72nd birthday. It's no longer 70 and a half. So anybody that's reaching 70 and a half this year, we don't have to worry about required distributions. They also skipped the required distribution this year as well. So going forward, everybody over 72 has required distributions. Now, these required minimum distributions are based on the collective balance of pre-tax money on January 1st of each year, meaning they don't care how many accounts you have. The IRS gathers the information from all your custodians. Every entity that holds IRA money reports to them and tells them how much your money is worth at the close of business on December 31st of each year. Okay. So when I say close of business, stock market closes, they have to record that value of your IRA and send it into the IRS. And that value is what's used to calculate your required distribution for the upcoming year. And that's why I say all your money's value on January 1st. Technically, before the open of the market, it's the value of your money. Okay, so they use the value of your money in the beginning of the year, but it's going to be your age at the end of the year. So based on your age at the end of the year, calculated with the uniform distribution table, and you may use a joint table if your spouse is more than 10 years younger, which I'll show you both those tables coming up here and discuss that a little further. So there's two different distribution tables that you would calculate from. For most of us, it's the uniform distribution table. For those of us with spouses more than 10 years younger, you have a whole separate way to calculate. If this is an account that came from a non-spouse, an inherited account that is Roth or IRA, it must be distributed within 10 years. That is the new rules on inheriting IRA or Roth money. All money has to come out within 10 years. And I'll be real honest, that sounded bad at first, but most people inherit the money later in life. Being able to let Roth sit and grow without touching it for 10 years, for a lot of people would end up being a benefit. You look at the previous distribution table that they had, and if you were inheriting this money in your 60s, honestly, I'd rather have 10 years to take it out. It's amazing how fast they were pushing out non-spousal inherited IRA and Roth money prior to the new rules. So for some people, this is better. For some people, it might be a little bit worse. If you inherit IRA or Roth money when you're young, then the 10-year distribution is really fast and a bad idea, but it's the new rules and it's what we have to do. But for most of us, our parents leave us the money and we're already approaching or near retirement. It was already supposed to come out fast. Well, now it has to come out within 10 years, and it's pretty clear and easy. But it definitely forces the heirs to put a plan together for IRA. If they inherit an enormous IRA, they need to have a plan on getting it out within 10 years. And that really means having a distribution schedule that is fit to their specific situation. Waiting and taking it all out at once is a really terrible idea when it comes to IRA. It's a great idea when it comes to Roth. Don't touch it, put it in a growth portfolio and take it out right on that last day of that 10th year, and you'll be perfect on the Roth. If you are still holding on to employer-based plans like 403Bs and 457s, I always caution people that those come with separate restrictions from the employer, not from the IRS. Especially the TIA CREF accounts. There are definitely some CalPERS accounts that I've seen that have some really crazy restrictions on them. You really need to get those addressed before you hit required minimum distributions on those. The best thing to do is when you leave an employer, start rolling it over to an IRA. So that way you maintain control of this money and you're not subject to any of those crazy rules that they have in some of these 403Bs and 457s. If you fail to take a required distribution, it's a 50% penalty. Which, here's the crazy thing with the new rules for the heirs. If they wait 10 years and forget that their 10-year anniversary is coming up, and they forgot to take out their Roth or IRA money, 50% penalty on the whole account is kind of scary. And I don't know how the IRS is going to handle that. It used to be you had to take a little distribution every single year, and a 50% penalty was certainly painful. But we're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you had a $500,000 IRA and your child inherits it and ignores it for 10 years, and they're in their 11th year and get a notice from the IRS that they owe $250,000 penalty for not taking the money out, that's pretty darn scary. So this is something that I'm not sure how they're going to handle in the future, because I know it's going to happen. There's plenty of heirs that will inherit money and not know what to do with it and just invest it. And there's plenty of custodians out there that are not going to pay attention to that. And so it's not the custodian's responsibility to take it out. And when I put custodian's responsibility here, you can certainly call the custodian and ask them to calculate a required distribution, but they can't just arbitrarily give it to you. And this 10 years is new. I don't have any faith that custodians are going to pay attention to the 10-year distribution schedule and micromanage that situation for everybody on their books. And so the penalty is serious. And when your heirs inherit IRA or Roth money, they need to have a plan to get it out. Required distributions cannot be converted to Roth. I've met people that have done it, but they have not been caught yet. The penalties are clear, and the IRS is very clear on the fact that required distributions cannot be converted to Roth. If your required distribution is $10,000, you certainly could take the $10,000 out and then go reach in and grab more money and convert that to Roth. There is no age restriction on converting to Roth, but certainly you're capped on the amount of taxes that you want to pay when you pull money out of that IRA. And then spouses can roll Roth or IRA money into their own accounts or maintain them as inherited IRAs. So there's going to be a few different choices for spouses, widows in this case. And so it's really important to understand that you can just roll it into your own for ease of use. And that is typically what people will do when losing a spouse. Their IRAs will just get assumed into their own. All right. So required beginning date has changed. This used to make all of us go cross-eyed because of the whole strange 70.5 thing. Well, now it's 72. So your first distribution, you have until, it says, up to April 1st of the calendar year after the calendar year in which you reach 72. Okay, so meaning the calendar year that you turn 72, they give you leniency all the way into next year, April. They figured if you forgot to take your first required distribution, maybe your tax person will notify you. And so they're giving you a little leniency in the beginning. So my example, if John was born in 6/30/1944, that means he turned 72 on 6/30/2016. First required distribution technically would not be due until April 1st of 2017. But the big problem with that is if you wait till the next year, meaning instead of taking it in 2016, you take it in 2017, you will end up having to take 2 distributions in that calendar year because every required distribution after your first has to be within the calendar year. So 2016 was John's first required distribution. But if they waited till 2017 to take it, that's fine. There's no penalty, but you'll have to take another one before December 31st of 2017. And for tax reasons, you typically don't want to do that. So if you have not retired yet, you are still working at 72 and you are not 5% owner or more, meaning you don't own the company that you're working for, then your required minimum distributions begin after you retire. And it's still the April 1st after the calendar year that you retire. So the reason they put this 5% owner is because they don't want you to set up an LLC or a company and work one day a week and call it employment and hide all your money from required distributions. If you own more than 5% of the company, then you will still have your required distributions. And then the non-spouse inherited Roth and or IRA money, the required distribution must be fully withdrawn in 10 years. And so that begins, the first year is the year after they pass away is the key on that one. So uniform distribution table. So our IRS has not caught up to the new rules that were put in place this year because our fearless leaders have put this together without the IRS's input. So the change to 72, this table has not changed yet, which is logical and fine. We still had a few people that got grandfathered into the 70.5. But the reality is that at some point this table will get adjusted, and we don't know how and when and where this will get adjusted. But we don't need 70 and 71 on here anymore. We need to start at 72. And so the way you figure out your required minimum distribution, again, the value of your money at the beginning of the year and your age at the end of the year. So if you are 72 this year, then your divisor is 25.6. In my example here, let's say you were 70 this year and you were still subject to take a required distribution. The value of the money was $500,000 at the beginning of the year. Your divisor right next to your age was 27.4. So all you do is take the full value of your money at the beginning of the year and the divisor of your age at the end of the year. Take 500 divided by 27.4. Your required minimum distribution is $18,248. So it says the required distributions start at 3.6 and go all the way up to 9. It actually pushes into the 10 range at 100. So we have an increasing rate of withdrawal, which puts quite a burden on the portfolio, especially later in life. If you're starting at 72, that starts pretty darn close to 4%. And I'll show you the percentage as we get bigger and bigger in a later slide. If you are married and your spouse is more than 10 years younger than you, congratulations, you have a smaller required minimum distribution. So for those of you that want to have a smaller required minimum distribution, you know what you need to do. But don't get any ideas. This chart goes down to 18 years old. And I'm not quite sure why they do that, but you know, it happens, I guess. So you find your age on the left-hand side and your spouse's age up here. This chart is way too big to put on one page, so I just took a little excerpt. And all you really do, in my example, you're 75 and your spouse is 58. So we follow them and join them together, and the divisor is 28. And we take the 500,000, we divide it by 28, and that gives us our required minimum distribution. The whole idea of this is they want the elder's money to last longer for the younger spouse. That's really what the concept is on that. So we know what our politicians had in mind there. Let's see. So the problems, well, I alluded to one or two of them already. The reality is that the increase in taxable income and marginal tax rates, we have to pay attention to taxation. Once we hit our required minimum distribution phase of our life, it really starts becoming painful for some of us, especially the baby boomer generation, which the vast majority of their savings has been in the IRA money, and that makes it the tax time bomb, as we call it. So we have to be very careful of that stuff. The other part of this is forcing the liquidation of these retirement account investments at an increasing rate annually. So it really does put a burden on the portfolio, and we'll talk about what that means for your portfolio. And then forces the heirs to liquidate the full accounts within 10 years. And unfortunately, a lot of heirs have their head in the sand. They don't, they haven't discovered a financial advisor yet, or things like that. They're in their working years, and all they're trying to do is save money. And so they don't think about the distribution schedule. And that becomes a little scary for the heirs in the future. All right. So the first thing we need to understand is taxes and how that's affecting us. And so I put a tax bracket on here that includes the standard deduction and being over 65, because we're talking about required minimum distributions. And so the standard deduction is pretty big, and being over 65, you get a little booster to that standard deduction. So right here, I call it the zero tax bracket. If you're over 65 and take the standard deduction on your tax return, you're already eliminating 14,000 or 27,000 of your income. And then from 14 all the way up to 23 or 27 to 47, you're only paying 10% taxes. Then from 23 to 54 or 47 to 107, depending on whether you're married or not, that's our 12% tax bracket. This is considered the retirees and low-income family tax brackets, okay? You can see we jump significantly. We jump 10% to 22%, okay? And that's all the way up to 99 for a single and 198 for married. Okay, this is a big jump in taxation. And at 70, you have to take your Social Security. At 72, you have required distributions. If you're not planning ahead, you might get pushed into the much higher tax brackets. And that's very important that you pay attention to these things and have a plan before you're 72. The earlier you pay attention to this stuff, the better position that you'll be in. And we'll talk about those types of things. So we really want to avoid pushing into the 22%. 22 and 24 are pretty close together, no big deal. If you're in the higher tax brackets, then you want to avoid the 32. But understand, all these with asterisks expire in 2025. Forget the politics of all this. The reality is that we are in a temporary lowering of the tax brackets. And the 12 was 15, the 22 was 25. The 24 was 28, And so we will see a jump in these tax brackets, regardless of any politician doing anything. These will jump back up in 2025. So we do want to pay attention to this. Roth conversions are very popular right now, taking advantage of the lowest taxes we've seen since the Great Depression. So types of income, this includes everything except long-term capital gains and qualified dividends. So all forms of income are taxed on these tax brackets except short-term capital gains and qualified dividends, which are right here. Qualified dividends and long-term capital gains are pulled out separately. Long-term capital gains is buying and selling an investment that you've held for more than a year. And qualified dividends are dividends that come from stock ownership. Okay, and stock ownership has to be in a U.S. company, and you have to hold it, I think it's 60 days before and after the ex-dividend date. So you have a window, you can't be buying and selling, and you have the U.S. Traded stock as well. If you hold those stocks, then they will be qualified. If you own them in mutual funds, a lot of the times they will not be qualified. Mutual funds are buying and selling all the time, so be very careful. The taxation in a mutual fund, you cannot control. So be very careful about trying to be tax advantaged when you're in mutual funds. And you can see here the qualified dividends and long-term capital gains are much lower taxation. The first $40,000 and $80,000 is taxed at 0%. And then up to 200 and 250, it's 15%. And then up from 200 to 400, 250 to almost 500, 18.8 and so on. So much lower taxation there, and that is absolutely something that should be paid attention to and should be a part of a good portfolio planning. Financial advisors should be able to make sure you have the right money in the right places to take advantage of that. So now, when we start talking about these required distributions, taxes are certainly important, but also the fact that you are forced to withdraw every single year is of utmost importance. A good tax plan, but also a good investing plan is really what has to be addressed as you head into these required minimum distributions. And the biggest thing that we talk about when we talk about these required distributions is the dangers of a volatile market. This gets a little scary. And so I have to show people this basic math to get you to understand why investing has to change in the years that you're pulling out of your portfolio. And so when we look at this basic math, if you start with $100,000 and you lose 50% of it, you have $50,000. And some of you may have come close to experiencing that for a few days this year. It's amazing how fast the market went down and then obviously came right back up. And so it's scary to go through turbulence like that. 2008 lasted a lot longer than our pandemic crash. But the reality is if you saw your portfolio go down 50%, that's pretty painful. So how much do you think you have if you earn the same 50% back? Okay, this is the question that some people go cross-eyed on. So your portfolio went down 50% and right back up 50%. And you don't have all your money back. You only have $75,000 back. And that's what's scary about turbulence. Okay, you watched your portfolio go down 50% and back up 50%, and you only have $75,000 because earning 50% on $50,000 is only $25,000. But when you lose 50% of 100, that's $50,000. It's the same percentage, but it's different dollars. And this math, this very basic math, is what we have to pay attention to as we head into our required distributions. And so when we look at this, we have to have some baseline here. So if we took no money out, how much do we have to earn to get to $100,000? Okay. How much does our portfolio have to earn after we lose 50% of our money? Percentage-wise, we have to earn 100%. Okay, so for us to get all our money back, if our portfolio goes down 50%, we have to wait until we earn 100% for us to just break even. Okay, so if we're in our growth years, if we're in we're still saving years, this is our 401k money years, what happens if we put 10,000 into this account? Move my pictures around here. All right, so what happens if we put 10,000 into this account? How much do you need to earn if you need to get all the way back to 110,000? Because we want to keep it apples to apples. We had 100, we lost 50% of it. We had 50. We put 10,000 in, that means now we have 60, but we have to earn enough to get to $110,000. To go from 60,000 to 110,000, we have to earn, there it comes, 83%. Okay, so I don't expect you to do this math, but what I do hope that you see here is having to earn 100% better or worse than 83%? I would rather have to earn 83% than have to earn 100%. So this helped us recover. When the market crashes, if you put money in, you are helping yourself recover. You get your money back faster and you get to growth faster. And that's for a lot of people when they were still working when 2008 happened and they kept putting in. 2008 wasn't that big of a deal because you watched your money explode in growth in the 10 years that followed that all went straight up. Okay. And this is why advisors, when you're in your growth years and you're in your I'm still saving mode, they tell you, don't worry about turbulence. Don't worry about market crashes. They're buying opportunities. Keep putting money in. This is sound advice, mathematically true. You are helping yourself recover. And once you recover, you have more shares and they explode in growth. And that is how you handle turbulence in your growth years. Okay. So now we talk about retirement years. Instead of taking 10,000 and putting it in to the portfolio, what happens if you take it out and go through the same turbulence? So you had 100,000, you lost half of it. You only have 50,000 left now, but you needed $10,000, so you took it out. Okay, so now you only have $40,000, but you only have to grow to $90,000. Okay. So to go from 40,000 to 90,000, you now need to earn 125% just to get your own money back. Okay, that's not getting back to 100,000, that's getting back to 90,000. This is the math that scares us financial advisors when our clients start taking money out of their portfolio. Any advisor that understands this math and this principle when it comes to investing needs to and wants to pull back turbulence in your portfolio, at least in the places that you are most likely to pull money from, like an IRA. Once you hit required distribution, the biggest fear is turbulence in your IRA because you are forced to take money out. And you can see here, you dug yourself into a deeper hole. If you take money out, you're doing the polar opposite of putting money in. I know that sounds kind of, well, duh, but mathematically, you're digging yourself into a worse hole. By putting 10,000 in, you saved yourself 17% returns. You didn't have to earn an extra 17%. But by taking 10,000 out, you cost yourself 25%. You cost yourself another 25% in growth. You have to get 25% more growth in order for you to get your own money back. Okay, this is powerful. And if you do this over and over and over and over again, you will destroy your portfolio. So even little turbulence, you're doing little versions of this, and it really hurts your portfolio. It makes it very inefficient. So just to drive this point home, because people seem to not believe this, there are three different scenarios in front of you right here. And if you had $100,000, you're not going to withdraw anything. You're not in your required distribution phase of your life yet. Three choices here. You have volatility later, which is the S&P 500, from 1990 back to 2000 or down to 2010. Your next choice would be volatility early, which is the exact same returns. It's the S&P 500, just in the opposite order, 2010 back to 1990. And then there's the average. Both of these average 6.25%. I'm going to have $100,000 and I want to put it into one of these investments. And I know the returns for the next 20 years. What do you think most people choose? Most people choose red, believe it or not. Let's see if I can get red to pop up. There it is. That's red. And that's what most people choose. That's green. They end up in the exact same place. And that's important for everybody to know. We didn't take any money out. And the average ends up in the same place. Okay. All we did was deposit. It doesn't matter the order of returns. It doesn't matter when the turbulence is early or later. It doesn't matter if we just earned the average. It's the same investment if we just put money in. That's it. Okay. Same investment. This is just returns in the opposite order, and this is just the average. If we take those same choices and put the same $100,000 in, but we're going to take $6,000 out every year. Now you're going to see results completely changing. They're all over the board. And the biggest thing that I have to drive home is when you start taking money out, the average means nothing. You have changed the math. When you take money out and you look at a mutual fund that says I average 6.25%, it means nothing. The average does not represent the portfolio anymore. Okay? If you are choosing to take money out of a portfolio, your average means nothing. Period. The word average means nothing. We have to understand that. Okay? Volatility later is the hero in this case. And this is because you start with a 6% withdrawal rate, but look at all these earnings. So your portfolio skyrockets. And a $6,000 withdrawal from 250,000 is nothing. It's like less than 2%. Well, it's a little over 2% withdrawal rate. But if you hit volatility early, and let's say your portfolio goes down to $60,000 and you take 6,000 out, that's a 10% withdrawal rate. The larger the percentage of the withdrawal rate, the scarier this gets. And you notice that burden on the portfolio never allows it to recover. You keep pulling and it keeps falling. You keep pulling and it keeps falling. Okay, so the stable is more predictable. You're taking 6% out, so you're really just growing 0.25% every year. But we can't find investments like this anymore, unfortunately. It just doesn't exist. So we have to understand that when we choose to withdraw, the average means nothing, and volatility in your early years are going to destroy your portfolio. All right, so one last way to show this. $100,000 deposit, 6% or $6,000 annual withdrawal if I earn 6 every year, or if I earn 6 every year. So notice this. This is a mutual fund that averages 6%. This is earning 6%. Those are two completely different things when you go to withdraw. If you were not withdrawing, they're the same thing. If you put the money in and you let it sit, you're going to end up with the exact same amount of money. But if you choose to take money out, this $100,000, well, I earn 6,000 and I take it out. And then I still have 100,000 that earns 6,000 and then I take it out. So it's just like owning a CD that's paying you 6% and everything goes fine. But you have a mutual fund that averages 6% and it looks more like that, and you ran out of money in 13 years. This is why I can't stand it when people gloat about their portfolio average. It means nothing when you head to your withdrawal years. We have to be careful about that. I don't care if you told me your portfolio averaged 20%. If you start saying things like, I should have no problem pulling 6% a year out, hey, good luck to you. That's not possible. Mathematically, it is not an accurate statement. It does not matter what your portfolio average is, okay? You have to be careful of this turbulence if you're choosing to take money out each year. What's amazing is a 2% fixed rate, which we can get these days. 2% fixed rate beat that 6% mutual fund. A 2% CD, literally a 2% investment. So a lot of people get flabbergasted by that. But the crazy thing is that the boring and safe investments out there actually end up performing a lot better in your retirement years. And that's only if you're choosing to take money out. And that's really only where you are required to pull money out. So we don't have to have it everywhere. So when we look at these RMDs, a lot of people are in different situations. Some people don't need their required minimum distributions, and some people do. Some people use them as income to fund their retirement, and some people don't. But the reality is your choice of how you invest this money will achieve different types of results. So this is an example of a simple 3% fixed interest rate in your IRA. This tells us exactly what your required minimum distribution will be every single year in the future. It's very predictable and reliable. And so is the value of your portfolio. If we know what we earn every year, I can tell you exactly what your required distribution will be every year into the future. Using the S&P 500, your required minimum distribution, the returns are certainly better in the S&P 500, but they're unpredictable. And so we have a required distribution that kind of dances around. It goes from 18 to 21, down to 11, back up to 18, down to 10, back up to 20, 24. So it bounces all over the place and it's unpredictable. Okay. But the amazing thing is we know the S&P returned better than 3%. But your required minimum distributions for just sitting back and earning 3% was $457,000, whereas the S&P 500 returns gave us a required distribution that was only $340,000 over that time period. And you notice that they're bouncing all over the place. Those required distributions are very unpredictable. So if you don't need your required distributions and all you're doing is reinvesting it and plan on giving it to your heirs, the S&P is fine, especially if you're reinvesting these required distributions into the stock market. Your overall portfolio will grow better because you're not actually withdrawing it. But if you're actually using these required minimum distributions and you're pulling money out, as boring and terrible as it sounds, you're much better off in a more stable portfolio. A more predictable, stable portfolio will produce more money in your pocket reliably. And that's what's really important for people that are trying to use these as income. Okay. So that's really important when it comes to transitioning your portfolio for retirement. When you are focusing on funding your retirement from your portfolio, whether it's the required distributions or not, the stable investing produces better results. All right, so here's that chart of percentages, and you can see it jumping into that over that 10% range in your 90s, and then it actually hits 15% when you hit 100. So you can see it creeps up, creeps up, creeps up. I accelerate the timeline down here, but by 85, you're hitting 6.5%, 7%, 8% in your 90 when you hit 90. So this is an increasing withdrawal rate. And the greater the withdrawal rate, the greater the effect of volatility. Okay. All right. So I had a little fun with this section. I put my thinking cap on and say, well, I'm going to be all the different types of advisors out there and give you their peace of mind and their solution. And I'll put some holes in some of them and try to show you where some people can take advantage of different schools of thought out there. And that's the good thing about unbiased financial advice. They understand all the different solutions out there. And that really becomes important for a lot of people to be achieving the best results for your situation. So prior to 72, this is the people that are paying attention and trying to plan before becoming 72. Manage your tax brackets and convert to Roth. This is huge right now. We are in the lowest taxation we've ever been in, and you should be and should have been converting to Roth and managing this. This is important. This is not just picking an arbitrary number every year and converting to Roth. This is filling the tax bracket that you're in based on your situation. And this is a calculation that's fairly intricate and has to come with a very good understanding of taxation. Achieving balance in your portfolio. You know, you can't wait till 72 and say all my savings is an IRA and I don't want to pay taxes. You have to actually put some work into this in the previous years. And so I always try to tell people having equal parts of pre-tax non-qualified money, or pre-tax money, meaning IRA money, non-qualified money, meaning the other types of savings that is taxable, and then Roth money. So you have three categories of money, and you should have equal parts of each of those types of money, and that'll give you the flexibility to handle the taxation in your retirement years. Maximize the use of your IRA between 59.5 and 72. Try to reduce the size of your IRA in these years. It's really important. And then estate planning, make beneficiary designations to optimize the achievement of your goals. The reality is that making a trust the beneficiary of an IRA can be dangerous. A trust is not a human being and does not have a life cycle. Therefore, it will all be taxable immediately. There are what we call pass-through trusts out there, but custodians have often ignored that and taxed it and given your heirs the remaining. So be very careful about that. You typically want to make a human being your beneficiary of any IRA or Roth account. Then consider your heirs' tax situation when making decisions to convert to Roth, because they will only have 10 years to withdraw. I often hear, well, my kids are better off than I am. And, you know, if they're high earners and they're in high tax brackets and you're in low tax brackets, they will thank you for getting the money out of IRA status. It's important to take that into account now when we make decisions on converting to Roth. You have to look at the life of your IRA money, not just your own life. You have to look at the predicted perceived life of your IRA and wherever it goes and try to find the lowest tax ways to get it out. And that should always be taken into consideration in your choices. So your tax man is going to tell you, give it all to a charity. Qualified charitable distributions are allowed once you reach 70.5. I predict that they will jump that to 72, but they haven't changed that. At 70.5 and beyond, you're allowed to take money from your IRA and give it directly to a charity. It has to go from custodian to custodian, meaning whoever holds your IRA directly to the charity. They have to send the money to the charity for this to work. You're allowed to give up to $100,000, okay, each year, and it will not be taxable income, okay? So it's not necessarily a function of your required distribution, but it can be your required distribution. For instance, if you had a $10,000 required minimum distribution, you can tell the custodian to send $5,000 to your church and the other $5,000 to you. Your 1099 should show up with a $10,000 distribution, satisfying your required distribution, but only 5,000 of it will be taxable. Okay, so it's a fantastic way. If you're going to do any charitable giving each year and you're over 70 and a half, it should always come from your IRA. It is much better than writing it off by itemizing. Okay, this money comes directly out of the taxable income, and it is significantly better than itemizing on your taxes. Okay. All right. So there's the cheesy life insurance salesman. I've seen a trend in the dinner seminars out there selling cash value life insurance. You cannot put IRA money into life insurance, period. Okay, that means you will have to pay taxes on the IRA money before you put it into life insurance. Where I see life insurance useful is not the cash value for retirees. Without even hesitation, in all circumstances, cash value life insurance, once you're in your late 60s and into your 70s, is an absolute scam. It is not an investment to grow your money. You have to start that when you're in your 20s for that to make any sense whatsoever. But where it does start making sense is if you have no need for your required minimum distributions and you want to pass your money and your savings to your heirs. Okay, there is permanent life insurance that you can put money into and pass to your heirs tax-free. So if you're in a situation where you have no need for this money and your heirs will want this money, they certainly would love tax-free life insurance more than they would love your IRA. So when I talk about this, it comes from that perspective. It doesn't come from some magical investment scheme that is going to grow your money tax-free. It's for when you pass away, your heirs will get a death benefit. So most effective for RMDs if you don't need them to fund your own retirement and you are reasonably healthy. Honestly, you've got to really start planning for this prior to 70. Your 60s is a good time to look at permanent life insurance if you really care about sending money to your heirs, which is very few of you out there. The baby boomer generation prefers to spend their last penny on their last day, not pass it all to their heirs. So for the few of you that do want to pass money to your heirs, life insurance is still a great option. Does not avoid taxation on your RMD. So I want to make sure that's clear. We're talking about, forced to take out a required distribution, pay taxes on it, but now where do we reinvest it? And this can avoid potential estate taxes. This makes up for a loss of income upon death and guarantees heirs a tax-free death benefit. You can also do planning for long-term care in these life insurance policies. So I'm going to share an example of where it would make sense to look at life insurance, which is rare. Again, a very rare circumstance. So in this example, Jeff is age 70, Ann is age 65. They're healthy, non-smokers. Income is great while Jeff is alive. So this is one of those things where Jeff had a big pension from work and they live off their income and have no need for these required minimum distributions. But in this case, Jeff took the pension solely for himself. So if he passes away, Ann doesn't get his pension anymore. Jeff's got $500,000 in his IRA, and the big concern is Ann will have very little income if Jeff passes. So the recommendation would be, okay, let's look at life insurance. Utilize that required minimum distribution that you don't need and reinvest it into a payment into life insurance that will give your spouse a big lump sum when you pass away. So the math kind of works out pretty well in this example. Just so I can do the math, I say your investment earns a safe 3.5%. Nowadays, I'd say you could probably top it out at about 3%, but 3.5, somewhere in there is what you're going to earn in a good, solid, safe investment these days. So 500,000 earning 3.5. This is exactly what the required distribution is every year into the future. And this is exactly how much money is left in the IRA every year into the future. See, if you know how much your portfolio is going to earn each year, it's easily calculated as to the value of your IRA and your required distribution. So once seeing that, Jeff says, okay, well, I'm comfortable spending $15,000 a year on a required minimum out of the required minimum distribution on a life insurance policy. So think of this like term life, permanent term life. If you make the payment, you have life insurance in force. So in this case, the payment is $15,000. That's a big life insurance policy. So let's see how much this ends up calculating out to. This represents what's left in the IRA plus reinvesting the difference. Okay, so I didn't need 23,000, I only needed 15, so I took the rest and reinvested it. So this is how much money is in the investment accounts, earning 3.5%. And this is how much life insurance that bought. So Ann, his spouse, now feels pretty comfortable because the 500,000 taxable turned into over $1 million, half of which was completely tax-free. Because this is how much money's in the investment accounts, and this is completely tax-free from the death benefit. Now, no matter whether he dies at 75 or 85 or 90, no matter when he dies, she knows she's getting over $1 million to fund her retirement once losing his income. And that makes the spouse feel good and solve their problem. This could also just pass to heirs. This is a lot of solutions for people if they care about how much money their heirs get. That's the key to this. So don't get sold on this wonderful return on your investment if you don't care how much your heirs get, okay? So then there's the annuity salesman, which is the vast majority of dinner seminars out there. So believe it or not, the annuity world has a ton of solutions. If you think about a required distribution, it's a series of payments, and a lot of people, that's kind of what annuities were built for. Pensions, those are all annuities. Social Security, that's an annuity. The United States government literally took the annuity world and used it to create Social Security. So the series of payments, the annuity world does have a lot of strengths. Unfortunately, there's a lot of cheesy salespeople out there selling whatever product pays them a good commission. But that does not mean that the annuity world is all bad. Okay, I always say the annuity is not the problem. The advisor selling it is. It needs to come with an actual plan, and that's important. Okay, so one of the problems I have is that 60-year-olds don't typically start planning for their required distribution phase. And some of these dinner seminar annuities tout these wonderful income programs for their annuities and guaranteed 7% growth and all that. And I've seen some of these spiels, and they're brilliant sales tactics. I got to be honest, they really are. And so we do have to be careful of this stuff. So one of the sales tactics that I saw out there is this concept of building a guaranteed required minimum distribution. And so you take somebody who's 60 now, which again, I have a problem with. Not too many 60-year-olds are trying to plan for what happens at 70 or 72 now. So this 60-year-old has 500,000 in an IRA plus some other savings. They would like to spend their last dollar on their last day, meaning they don't really have heirs that they want to leave money to. That's a key to utilizing these guaranteed income benefits out there. All right. You don't like risk, so you've got to be on the risk adverse side, and you know you don't have enough income to pay all your bills. So if you already had plenty of income, I don't know that I would really look at a situation like this. So then the salesperson goes into this worst, middle, and best 10-year period. So let's go invest your money in the stock market. Here's the worst period. 500,000 turns into 343,000 after 10 years, and your required distribution is only going to be about $13,000. The middle, you've got your 500,000 turns into 837, and your required distribution is about $33,000. In your best case scenario, 500,000 turns into 1.2 million, and you have just short of 50,000 a year in a required minimum distribution. So this is the gamble of investing in the stock market. You don't know where your money is going to be worth 10 years from now. Okay. So that's their sales spiel, and say, well, what if I could guarantee you the best results? What if I could guarantee you the best results? And what they always do is they get you all to agree, this is a fantastic investment. If you could guarantee me that 500,000 turns into 1.2 in 10 years, I love that investment. Okay. That's a pretty win-win situation there, and we like it. So they get you to say you love it and you want that investment, and then they say, well, I can guarantee that performance. Okay, because your required distribution you were happy with was just short of $50,000 with 1.2 million. But I can guarantee you, and this example is 675. When I built this, the 7 had disappeared. They do have 7% guaranteed growth out there right now. So this is, again, for people that want to spend their last dollar on their last day. This is not good if you want to leave money to heirs. This can be a joint payment for life, but this is a single example. Okay, so this there's plenty of products out there that are going to pay these big crazy bonuses. So you deposit 500,000, you get 550, and they're guaranteeing 6.75% growth. And if it's 7, it ends up at that 1.2. But that's guaranteeing that the income account will have a little over $1 million in it without the crapshoot, without worrying about it, that it's only going to be 300,000. It's guaranteeing that it's going to be over $1 million. And when you reach 70, that's 5.6% payout. 5.6% of $1 million is $59,000. That's $10,000 a year more than the best case scenario that they described. 10,000 a year more. That's a significant raise. That is a significant raise. And they'll double it for long-term care, meaning you'll get 118,000 a year for up to 5 years if you're in a long-term care facility. That's pretty fantastic. Okay. But we have to understand this is just pie in the sky stuff. This is not real money. This is an income benefit. You don't have $1 million. You only have the guarantee of 59,000 a year, which is not the same as having $1 million in your pocket. So we have to be careful about this. The cash value of this is going to be somewhere a little over $500,000. Your money's safe, but if you died, your heirs aren't getting $1 million. Okay, and you had to sit around and wait 10 years to get this big lifetime income benefit. So you're starting this income at 70 to get this big, wonderful benefit out of here. Well, for somebody that wants to spend their last dollar on their last day and doesn't care about their heirs getting money or not, and they just want that guaranteed payment for the rest of their life, better yet, doubling if they're in long-term care, this can be a solution. You don't have to start at 60. You could start at 50 and start payments at 60. But you typically want these to sit back and grow for a while, usually 5 to 10 years. And then you want to commit and trigger the income benefit and take the income and spend it. So for that small, tiny little window of people out there that want the guaranteed income from this, want to spend their last dollar on their last day, and are planning ahead, these income annuities that are sold in dinner seminars can be very good investments. It's just that most people get them sold and they have no need for them. They believe in the 675 guaranteed growth. It's not real. It's just calculating an income benefit for you later in life. So all the planning needs to be focused on how long you're going to let it grow and when you're going to take that income. And it should be part of a financial plan. There's nothing wrong with utilizing these things if you utilize them properly, but just getting them, sold to you and putting them in your portfolio with no plan on using them, they're useless. They're terrible investments. You can't lose your money, but they're not good investments. Use them properly and they can be great. All right. So the second type of annuity is the oldest annuity. This one's been around since Roman times. I'm not kidding. 240 BC, something like that. I mean, they found it etched on a Roman tablet. And this is called an immediate annuity. This is what our Social Security system was built on, was the concept of a lump sum achieving a payment system for the rest of life. So an insurance company will take a lump sum from you and they will calculate how much they think they can pay you for the rest of your life based on how long they think you're going to live. So an immediate annuity is going to give you the highest form of payout than any other form of annuity out there. And so my examples here, this, company pensions and Social Security, this is really important. These have no cash value. If you die, nobody gets a lump sum from your pension or Social Security. If you give the insurance company this $100,000 example here, the $100,000 is gone. The insurance company gets to keep it. But in return, in this example, a male age 70 could get $7,400 a year for the rest of their life. Well, just so you understand, your first required minimum distributions rounded off to 4%. That's only $4,000. We're starting at $7,400 and you get that paid for the rest of your life. That's fantastic. That's a huge payout for the rest of your life. Okay. But this is for life only. If you die 2 days later, the insurance company gets to keep it. Wah, wah. That's not a good thing usually. So we do have to go in that knowing that the money is gone. But if you live to 100, trust me, you win. This is the best investment in your portfolio if you live to 100. Okay, so some people don't like the idea of the 100,000 being gone, so they will take a lower payment with a guarantee that the heirs will get something if you die prematurely. So this example is single life, meaning your life, or 15 years minimum. So meaning if you die in 5 years, your heirs will get 10 years of payments. If you die in 30 years, your heirs will get nothing. So it's a minimum of a 15-year payout. So they will pay you less. And yes, unfortunately, women, because you live longer, you will have a lower calculation. You will get paid less than a man in this case. Sorry, it keeps coming. So because you live longer, that's a lower payout. So this is good for people. Honestly, I tell people that the only reason you would utilize an annuity like this is if you had very little income and the income didn't even pay a base living expense. So your Social Security is $600 a month and your bills are $2,000 a month. You will live stressed out through retirement, and this will alleviate that stress. This is a great idea for people that have the fear of outliving their money and not being able to pay the basic bills, okay? Basic bills, keeping a shelter over your head and keeping yourself fed. All right. So choices and all the different types of annuities out there. Your required minimum distribution if your cash was in the closet. Okay. So $324,000 in required minimum distributions. This is a $500,000 deposit. So 70 to 88, yes, required distributions going forward are going to be beginning at 72. But if you were 70 and a half before this year, then you would have had required minimum distributions already beginning. So this is how much you would add to pull out, and this is how much is left in your closet. That's just a baseline to compare. This is also a baseline. This is what the S&P 500 did in those years. If you sat back, there are annuities called multi-year guarantee annuities, fixed annuities. These are literally CDs from insurance companies, nothing to be afraid of. There's no dinner seminar anywhere selling these things because they don't pay very big commission. So the dinner seminar guys hate these things. They don't want to do them. Number one seller in the United States of fixed annuities is banks, believe it or not. Most of your big box banks will sell you a fixed annuity when you walk in there right now. It is the same thing as a CD, except it's with an insurance company. It's a fixed interest rate for a fixed period of time. The only difference is they give you access typically to 10% of the account at all times. So the ability to pull a required minimum distribution is actually fundamentally a part of those fixed annuities and not a problem at all. But as you can see, sitting back and earning 3%, we know exactly what your portfolio is worth every year in the future, and we know exactly what your required distribution is. It's a good stable return. 3% is out there. You get typically 5 to 7 years. I think I've still seen 3% out there on 5-year fixed annuities. So not bad. 431,000 guaranteed in required minimum distributions, and they get a little bigger every year to help combat inflation. That's a nice little tidbit there. So if you're using these as income, this is a great solution for some people. There are things called fixed indexed annuities. It's just a variation of a fixed annuity. Instead of knowing you're going to earn 3% every year, what you earn changes every year. You just can't lose. So you have better earning potential in here, but some years you might make 0 and some years you might make 10%. And yes, you can make 10% in these. And there are no fees in either of these types of annuities out there. Fixed indexed annuities are a big, wonderful solution for the bond portfolio alternative out there. We're seeing a huge migration in the industry from the bond portfolios to these fixed indexed annuities. And historically, the returns are significantly better than fixed annuities, certainly CDs and even bonds. They've done a lot better than bonds, and just as safe as any CD out there. And then that immediate annuity, as I said, by far the best return out there. If you start an immediate annuity at 70, your payout will be better than any other scenario out there if you live a long time. That's very important to understand. If you want the most money out of it and you have longevity in your family, that can be a great way to do it. All right, so lots of annuity options out there. I think the big thing that I want everybody to understand about annuities is there's nothing wrong with them. It's just they need to come with a plan. You've got to understand the tool and how it's going to be utilized, because it's usually a very defined outcome. It's not like a stock. It's not like a bond. It's not like a CD. There's a defined outcome here. There's a defined reason that we're utilizing this, and it should be a part of a plan. And when used properly, they're very powerful and they're very useful. All right, there's my image of a stockbroker, especially this year. Holy cow, what a wild ride this year has been. So the traditional stockbroker approach to required minimum distributions. The big thing to understand is that the industry has kind of put a chart together based on age, and age honestly has nothing to do with it. They just had to come up with the average person, and when they needed their money was in their late 60s and 70s. We know at 70 you are forced to take money out of IRAs, and so every statistician at every Schwab, Fidelity, Ed Jones, all those big box companies, every statistician at those companies knows that if you need your money, you should not have it in a turbulent portfolio. And so what you see here is the amount percentage-wise of your money that should be in stocks, and then your age. And every statistician, everybody that studies the markets out there and investing out there, every single one of them would agree that if you need your money and you're pulling it out regularly, that 60-40 range, 40% in the stock market, 60% safe, is statistically the best portfolio out there. I want to make sure you heard that. Every statistician out there that studies the markets does not want your money in a turbulent portfolio when you go to withdraw. Period. There is no arguing that. Anybody that knows this world knows that's a terrible idea. And so this is what every computer system from Vanguard to Schwab to Fidelity to all these guys, this is what they utilize to say what kind of portfolio you should have. And unfortunately, they based it on age, not based it on whether you need your money or not. And so, somebody that's actually paying attention instead of a computer telling them what to do understands that and can apply this to your situation, because I've met plenty of 72-year-olds with required minimum distributions that your IRA should be here, but the rest of your money can be up here because you're Warren Buffett and you have no need for it. Does that make sense? I want to make sure everybody understands this chart and all the computer systems out there that tell you how to invest your money. It really only applies to the money that you need, period. If you have more money than you need for yourself, then you're free to invest it 100% in the stock market if you want to. But the sections of your portfolio that you're going to be withdrawing from, you should really be focusing more down to that 60-40, 60% safe investments, 40% stock market investing. All right. Here's the reason why. This shows the volatility in a portfolio. 100% stocks for the last 23 years. This shows the volatility of it. This is 75% stocks, 25% bonds, 50-50, half your money in stocks, half your money in bonds. And what you're noticing here is as we're adding safe investments to your portfolio, your highs aren't as high, but your lows aren't as low, and we're getting better results. We have a more predictable portfolio to pull from. We never want to pull from down markets. We hate pulling out of a portfolio that is lost because we are now compounding those losses with withdrawals. And that is the worst thing you can do. Remember the math we started with. That's really the important part of this. So then you hit 75% bonds, 25% stocks, and 100% bonds. We need a more predictable line when we choose to withdraw. It's very important. So the key to building a stock portfolio for someone who needs to make a required minimum distribution is separation of investments. You have to have safe investments to pull from when the market's not doing well, and you have to have growth-based investments to keep up with that inflation and growth portfolio that you're really looking for. Okay, there are a lot of people will set these up with just dividend portfolios right here. So the stock portfolio portion will be a dividend portfolio, and the safe investments will be whatever you choose. Whether typically the stockbrokers are going to use the bond portfolios, they'll put bond mutual funds in there for you, which I'm not a fan of, but that's what they typically do. Okay, so you have to have a separation of investments. You have to look at your IRA, and typically you're going to have somewhere around 60% of your IRA in safe investments and 40% in the growth mode, or just a nice, easy dividend portfolio. So this is an example of the performance over the years of a portfolio like that. And you can see the required minimum distribution, and it doesn't bounce around as much. I've got 2008, I've got 9/11 in here, and you're not seeing it bounce around as much. It just kind of gradually gets bigger. There's a little bit of bouncing around, but not a huge amount. And that's because we have that mix. So in this case, I've got 150,000 in the stock market and 350 in safe investments. And I'm not here to tell you what to utilize, but again, you've got the equities, the mutual funds, ETFs, REITs, MLPs, risk-based investments up here, and the safe investments, cash, money market, CDs, fixed annuities, bonds, fixed indexed annuities, government securities, all those types of things down here, okay? So the safe investments and the stock market investments. And really what I did here was all I did was produce a required minimum distribution from dividends. So we can't control how much we're taking out in dividends or receiving in dividends, but if you put a good, strong dividend portfolio in there, we can just take whatever dividends they give us as a part of our required minimum distribution and withdraw the rest from the safe investment. And this has worked fairly well through a lot of big turbulence because you never have to sell a stock. And that's the great thing about dividend portfolios. When it comes to required distributions, your required distributions very quickly exceed any dividend portfolio. I don't care how aggressive you're going to get with your dividend choices out there. The reality is you're starting at 4% of your total portfolio, and you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. It's hard to achieve that level of dividends out of a portfolio. And so you have to have a plan for the rest. And so take your dividends from the stock portion and have safe investments to withdraw from, allowing the stock portfolio to be turbulent, but not really affecting you much. Okay, so that's the great way that a thoughtful approach to the stock portfolio will achieve. And You have to go through and put this where you need savings, where you need to pull from your savings. You have to deploy tactics like this. You have to have separation of investments, the risk-based investments versus the safe investments. And you have to know never to pull from a down market. Don't sell stocks. Pulling dividends is fine, but don't sell stocks, especially during a down market. All right. So I always end with retirement planning is not just investing your money. I mean, all the tax planning and everything that goes into these required minimum distributions is very important. So be honest about where you are and where you want to be. Set goals, educate yourself, develop a strategy, inspect what you expect, and consult with knowledgeable, unbiased advisors. Especially in a case like this, advisors that understand taxation are really important leading into this required minimum distribution world. Very helpful in your 60s, trying to push money into Roth and other choices that we have out there. So let us know if we can help out at all. The nonprofit requires I give you at least an hour of my time. We don't charge for appointments. The education that we put out there is on the nonprofit side. So is the first appointment. We're not here to sell you anything. You can meet with me and ask any question that you want. I will sit back and take as much time as you need to help you out the best I can. I'm not here to sell you anything, but certainly if you want us to manage wealth or do financial planning or do your taxes or any of that stuff, certainly I do this for a living, and I'm more than happy to help out on that side. We do have plenty of free reports out there. It's a little easier to disseminate those when we're in person, but if you want a free report from us or a copy of our presentation, certainly let us know. You can contact us anytime, either by email or phone. I'll type that into the messaging system as well. Contact us at sesweb.net, or our phone number for everybody, 800-345-3155. You can certainly give us a call or shoot us an email if you want a copy of the presentation or the free report. Just let us know on either of those, and certainly to meet with us for any reason, you can contact us as well. And then the website, which I showed you earlier, FPFEAZ, has all of our classes on it. So if you're trying to look for other topics or see where I'm speaking next, or when it's not where anymore, it's when I'm speaking next,